Can be a little troublesome. Okay, so we've been reading through the book of Revelation for some time, and tonight we're up to Revelation chapter 9. If you want to follow me in your Bibles, I encourage you to do that. And we've been using what is sometimes called the historical orthodox approach. And this is interesting because if you've been a Christian for any length of time, you'll know that there are all different approaches to understanding the book of Revelation, and there's books and books and books that have been written on it, and I've read quite a few of them. And I got to be honest with you, as a young Christian, I was reading these books, How to Interpret Revelation, my head was just spinning. I was like, I can't really understand this until I read this approach. And for me, it works. I think it's, consistent, and it helps us understand the book. And so for a while I was kind of like, well, do you really want to study Revelation? Because there are just so many views about it. But what I came to realise was, if you don't teach on it, somebody else will fill that vacuum. People will go elsewhere and they'll end up with bad teaching. So it was a daunting task, but we're doing okay. We're up to chapter 9. So tonight I'm going to go through verses 12 through to verse 19. So covering quite a lot tonight, really. And I'm going to read those out to you. Okay, verse 12. One woe is past, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter. And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, Loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, and I heard the number of them. And thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire and of, I'm not sure if that's jacinth or jacinth, I'm going to say jacinth, and brimstone, and the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone. By these three was the third part of men killed, by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone which issued out of their mouths. For their power is in their mouth and in their tails, for their tails were like unto serpents, and had heads, and with them they do hurt. So again, it's sort of mind-blowing, isn't it, really? When you try and picture that in your head, it's like, it's what? It's just such a bizarre image. But as we were looking at last week, these are symbols. These tell you something about an event that's going to happen. The language that is used, Revelation, is a vision. It's a continual sort of unfolding vision. So this is poetic, metaphorical language, and each of these symbols represents something. Sometimes they're just kind of you can't necessarily take each one individually and just say this means this, that means that. Sometimes it's just an overall meaning that's being given. So we're going to take a look at this tonight. I will say this. It starts off in verse 12. One woe is past, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter. So we spoke about this, the angel who flies and cries, woe, woe, woe. Three woes. Woe is like, something terrible is going to happen. Woe to you, Jesus says to the Pharisees, and so on. Some people, I think, were getting a little bit confused about the three woes, and we're kind of going back to Revelation 8, where we had the image of the star, wormwood. That's not part of the woes. And so what I thought I'd do, just to start off this section, because it starts with these two woes, is to just reiterate and kind of simplify down what these woes represent, just to make them more kind of memorable, more something you can hold in your head. What I would advise, seriously, if you're somebody who struggles to remember things and you're having to keep going back and saying, now what was that again? Top tip, get a notebook. Get a little paper notebook from the pound shop. They're really cheap. You know, get a notebook and a pen, or if you've got like really wide margins in your Bible, sometimes you can just write in there, just write down the notes, and then you've got the notes there. You can go and look back, because otherwise we've got to keep going back and kind of clarifying and clarifying. Don't really want to do that. I want to go forward. So here are the three woes as kind of clearly as I can put them, using this historic Orthodox method of interpretation, which I said before, this is how the church used to interpret Revelation until about the 1830s, something like that. Then it started to change, other ideas came in. So I think this is, you know, historically a good approach. So woe number one represents the church's conflict with the Sasanian Persian Empire and the religion of Zoroastrianism. We looked at that last week and the week before. And you can go back, if you want to find out more about that, you can go, the videos of it are online on our YouTube channel. You can go and check that out. The second woe, the one we're going to look at tonight, is about the church's conflict with the Saracens and the religion of Islam. The third woe is about the church's conflict with the Pope and the religion of Roman Catholicism. And I do call it a religion, you know, not really part of biblical Christianity, and you'll see why when we get to that, why I'm saying that. Just to clarify again, this is about doctrine, it's not about people. I don't hate Zoroastrians or Muslims or Catholics or Hindus or anybody else. This is about truth. I don't hate them, I don't wish them harm, I don't wish others to harm them. This is about doctrine, it's about truth. And the reason that I am opposed to these doctrines that we have covered and we're going to be covering tonight is because they undermine the deity of Christ, the fact that Christ is God. They undermine the deity of Christ, who is overall God blessed forever. Amen, it says in Romans 9:5. So he is God, overall is Christ. And or because they attack the truth of his gospel, which, as you know, is the power of God unto salvation, Romans 1:16. So this is why I believe these events are recorded for us. The Bible doesn't record every single historical event that happens at a particular time. Like I've said before, you know, Alexander the Great gets a tiny mention in the Bible, whereas some guy called Abraham gets pages and pages and pages. And this is how the Bible works. It's like God only includes the things that are important to know, the things that are going to affect his people, are going to affect his church. And so that's why I think these are important, and they are things that we need to know about. So the second woe and the sixth trumpet. There is one woe left, and therefore there's one trumpet left. You've heard of the seven trumpets of Revelation. That's what it's talking about. As the trumpet's blown, an event occurs, you know, an important event. So in verses 14 and 15, it said, "Loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates," and the four angels were loosed. I don't think it necessarily means that these are angels that are, you know, floating around in the river. I think what it's talking about is that there are these angels purposefully in this region. They're in this geographical region, as we looked at. So the Euphrates eventually, according to my research, eventually joins the Tigris, and it flows out into the Persian Gulf. And part of this, I believe, actually forms the border between Iraq and Iran, and that's where we were looking, wasn't it? We were looking at Iran and the Sasanian Empire, the Persian Empire, and so this is taking place in this region, and in fact, this is really the kind of, well, we'll get to it in a minute, but the kind of the next stage after that Sasanian Persian Empire, which, remember, it came so close to the Eastern Roman Empire, which was like a Christian empire. This was like the centre now around Constantinople. It was a centre of Christianity, and now this Persian Sasanian Empire came threatening it, didn't it? But now we're going to see the next stage of kind of historical development. So there are 4 angels, 4 evil angels, otherwise they wouldn't have been bound. And John Wesley says, the number of angels let loose agrees the number of their first and most eminent caliphs. So he's talking about Islam, talking about the rise of Islam. And he names them. He says these were Ali, Abu Bakr, Omar and Osman. Now I think these are probably older names, or more anglicised names, but there is the fourfold caliphate, or 4 caliphs. Fiona's nodding knowledgeably. Yeah, so he's saying, these 4 angels, they agree with the number of the first and most eminent caliphs. Now he's not actually saying that these men are angelic beings. He's not saying, oh, they're not men, they're actually angels. But what he's saying is that these wicked angels work through each of these 4 men specifically. And that's how Satan does it, isn't it? He works through men and women. And he's saying that's what's happening here, that there were these 4 wicked angels, and God gave the permission, and that's what it is, permission, okay, you can loose them, you can let them loose, you can free them. And this is round about the 600s AD. I'm trying to be a bit more general now instead of be really specific. Just so if you can imagine that, like the 600s AD, we get this kind of rise of Islam, and what happens is really a violent conquest by the Saracens. More accurately, we call them Arab Muslims, really, and they come down into this region and they establish what I believe is called the Rashidun Caliphate, and it happens over a period of time, because of course at this area of Iran is Zoroastrian, is the main, Zoroastrianism is the main religion. It's called something different in Persian, so forgive me, but we know it as Zoroastrianism. But what happens is a gradual Islamization. So they gradually become Muslim in this area, and it takes a bit of time. But that what we have now then is the church, the heart of the church, the centre of Christianity, now facing a new enemy, which is a powerful enemy, both militarily and also spiritually. And the size of their army is huge, isn't it? Let's have a look at it. Verse 16. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000. And I heard the number of them. I'm not sure what he means by I heard the number. Maybe he heard this. We've had it before, where these horses appear. Maybe he heard the sound of the horses' feet running, or something that's open to interpretation. But one commentator says this utterly bewildering number simply stands for an immense host, huge army. So you don't have to sit there with a pen and kind of work out, well, how many would that be? And sometimes the Bible just uses like a huge number to say there's lots of them. There's lots and lots. And again, we have these riders on horses, verse 17. And thus I saw horses in the vision. What are the horses? Well, perhaps they're just horses. Perhaps they're horses with riders, and that's what I think they are. They're coming down, sweeping down, and just kind of conquering. And so we have these colours on their breastplates, which, interesting, kind of correspond to the three things that bring destruction coming from their mouths. And it says the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouth issued fire and smoke and brimstone. Well, we looked at, didn't we, last week, that you know, it's unlikely that there are horses with lions' heads on them. You know, this is symbolic language. It's just saying, you know, they're ferocious, they're terrifying. You know, it's like as they come towards you, it's as if a great lion is coming towards you. And the fire and the smoke and the brimstone, again, is a picture of destruction, isn't it? You know, we see when God brings destruction, sometimes it's sometimes literal fire, isn't it? Like with Sodom and Gomorrah, you know, God rains down fire and brimstone. So it's a picture of destruction and imagery of destruction that we see. And it's very similar to what we looked at actually last week and the week before. Last week, do you remember, it was the tails were like scorpions, right? But this week is different. So I think it's kind of poetic, symbolic language. It denotes the ferocity of their conquest. And what happens historically here is that the Christianized Eastern Roman Empire loses territory to the Muslims, namely Egypt, Palestine and Syria. And this is notable because those places had just been reclaimed from the Sasanian Persian Empire. They kind of got them back, and then the Muslims came in and they've lost them again. So it's quite a desperate time for the church. The church is kind of under attack, really, you know, or at least that region is. Now, before it talked about how those who had the seal of Christ or the mark of Christ, that God was protecting them, wasn't he? And you remember I said it was like those who were genuine Christians, who were believers, who had the Spirit, were protected by God's unusual providence in some way. But those who were just kind of nominal Christians just said, "Oh yeah, we'll be Christians because the Emperor Constantine said, right, this is the official religion now. We're all Christians now." And it's like, do you remember I said you can't make a Christian just by saying you're a Christian now. You know, you have to come to God. You have to believe on him yourself. And so, but there's no mention of that here. So I don't know whether that divine protection is still there, you know, at this particular time. But anyway, this is what's happening. The Muslims are attacking, and the Christian Roman Eastern Empire is losing these places. And the power that they have is in their mouths. That's the fire, the smoke, the brimstone, and the destruction they bring is as they push forward. So it makes sense that that's something at the front of the horse, at the front of the animal. It's saying as they're going forward, it's like this destruction, just kind of, you know, it's terrifying. It's like fire, it's like smoke. Again, I think it's more symbolic, although they could literally, of course, be burning as they go and setting fire to villages and so on. And then it says something interesting. It says that it's also in their tails, verse 19. For it says, "For the power is in their mouth," like as they go forward, "and in their tails. For their tails were like unto serpents, and had heads, and with them they do hurt." So it's just clarifying there, like, so it's like destructive at the front, but even at the back it's dangerous. And it's not like the horse had a serpent's tail. It's saying no, it's like the head. What he's doing is pointing out that, you know, a snake's tail is nothing, is it? But a snake's head, you've got to be careful because, you know, if it bites you, you can die. And what I think it's talking about here is exactly the same as when we looked at the Sasanian Persians and it talked about the scorpions in their tails. It's like, you remember I said, it represents their doctrine, their venomous, poisonous, their toxic teaching, doctrine. That as the Sasanian Persians went forth, they brought this Zoroastrianism with them, and they drew men after them, sort of behind them, until they also believed it. And this is what the scriptures are concerned about, is what you believe, right? And so now we have a very similar kind of thing. And in fact, there's an interesting quote in Isaiah 9, verse 15, which says, "The prophet that teacheth lies, he is the tail." So I thought that was kind of interesting. But yes, I think what it is their doctrine, is their teaching, that they're drawing men after them. And this teaching is venomous, is poisonous. It can kill you spiritually. And you'll notice as well that the first was the venom of the scorpion, but now it's being compared to the venom of a snake. And I'm sure you'll see this imagery of a snake is much closer, isn't it, to the person of Satan. So, now of course one of the big questions really for us is, why does God allow this? Why is God letting this happen? Because the angels were bound. It's clear from the text that the person who allows them to be unbound, to be loosed, is God. Verse 13 said that when the sixth angel sounded, they heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the angel, "Loose the four angels which are bound," at the Review Phrases. So it's like God is allowing this. In fact, there is nothing that happens in this world that either God has not caused directly or he has allowed to happen. Otherwise, God is not all powerful, and we know that he is. He is omnipotent, is the fancy term. It means he's all powerful. So God is allowing this for a reason, and we're going to be looking at that in more detail in the next Bible study we do. But why does God allow these things? Why did he allow these things to come upon his church?